Angie says, "Dance for me, Richie."
Cubs won last night. Woo!
Wow. What's the record? What's our Cubs record now?
84-48, I think. We're 14 games above St. Louis. 84-47. My bad.
What are the odds of making the playoffs this year?
About 99.9% right now.
Unbelievable.
Yeah, they're steamrolling this year, which makes me scary. It's scared because now we're doing so well in the season. You get to the postseason and it's a completely different ballgame. So you just run into a hot team and you're done, or you're not hot and you're done. So it's kind of like hockey in that aspect.
Justin says 100% chance that the Cubs make it, but the Dodgers will win it all. I don't know anything about sports ball. Yes, I have nothing. Well, let's see here.
I'd love to get the Dodgers in the playoffs. I'd love to avenge 2007, or was it 2008? One of those years where they swept us in the playoffs. Yeah, I'd love to get revenge. And the Marlins. I want the Marlins in the freaking playoffs. That's who I want. I'm going to shut these Marlins fans up, all two of them.
So this, if people who are watching wonder what the company chat room is like, it's basically Richie sending pictures of texting with his dad about sports games. Sarah and I talking about wheels on cars.
No.
Eric saying where he's going to work out.
And then he probably needs a shower at any given moment.
Yeah. Between the workouts and the living in New York with no air conditioning at the moment, because he just moved into a new place that doesn't have AC yet. And it's hot in the middle of summer.
And dealing with some of the databases he's been dealing with, some of them right now.
If you're wondering what Eric's doing and why he's not here, he is fixing corruption. So, we can't say this often enough. People I went through my whole entire career and I never had to deal with database corruption, and now
Really?
I turn and see it everywhere. Oh my God!
I think you got lucky.
I did, yeah. It was not due to skill.
In a world where corruption reigns supreme, one DBA will fight the madness.
And that
Eric Darling.
Yeah. Not
the corruptionator.
You please, for the love of all that's holy, and by that I mean your databases, check to make sure that if a database matters to you, it's in full recovery model. See, Tara, I got it right. That you're doing full and log backups, that your backups are working, that you test your backups by restoring them, and that you're running CheckDB on a regular basis. Because if you don't, you're going to have to restore to the last backup where the check corruption didn't occur, and who knows how far that may be. The case that we're dealing with this week, that's 3 weeks old data that they're having to go back through.
Yeah, I'll be talking to my client in 45 minutes. They haven't run CheckDB ever, so I'll be mentioning Eric's, what Eric's doing today.
Right now, as we speak.
Yes.
All right, so we might as well go ahead and fire away and start doing some questions here. Let's see here. Brandon says, do you guys know of any good blogs to read on Service Broker? I have a developer that wants to start using it, and I need a crash course in it. Joris Arose has no idea. He's down below his desk. Tara, have you ever worked with Service Broker?
No, we've only ever talked about it. We wanted it implemented to start doing different things with jobs. Have like this central job server, and it would be very smart, and it was going to use Service Broker, and it never developed.
That's like how all software design starts?
Yeah.
It's going to be very smart. And then in reality, it's like, I just hope it has all its fingers. So the two good resources, Klaus Aschenbrenner has a book on Service Broker. If you go and hit Amazon.com or whatever you like for books, there's a book on Service Broker, yellow and black cover. It's the only book as far as I know. Also look for Adam Mechanic, like car mechanic, but M-A mechanic, Workbench Service Broker. And he has a set of scripts that you can use to learn Service Broker. That's what I stepped through for the Microsoft Certified Master exam. It's just like, hey, here's a feature, here's how it works. I don't know anyone personally using it. I know a lot of people from training classes when I go, hey, quick show of hands, how many people are using service brokers? And hands go up. And I'm like, do you know how it works? And they're like, no, the last guy did it. So somewhere out there in the world, there's some guy who's running around implementing service broker like crazy, and then the rest of us have to deal with it afterwards.
Yeah, it was on my last job. One guy was doing it. And I didn't have the guts to go to him and say, why? What problem are we solving that needs service broker? And that we can't put on a separate app server with another tool or technology.
Yeah, that's my thing. It's what app servers are for, and queues. And
that's right. Yeah, there's a ton of good open source stuff for that. But
yeah. Khan says, good morning. I added tempdb data files, but I've noticed that the files are not used, or their growing has been a little uneven. My original file was 170 gigs. Do I need to make all my additional files 170 gigs too? I don't have enough space. So it sounds like, to rephrase, you originally had one file that was 170 gigs, and you've added a few more files, but they're really tiny. What should Khan do next? Star Trek. Tara, go ahead.
Check the file sizes, check the auto growth. I suspect that you have uneven file growth on them, which SP Blitz would tell you about. Run SP Blitz, and it'll tell you if anything is off on your tempdb configuration. That's likely what you have. You probably have the first tempdb file, might have the 10% auto growth by default, and maybe you set up the other files to use, 1 gigabyte, for instance. You would just need to fix the first file. Make sure that they're all the same size and they all have the same auto growth. And you can shrink. You can shrink on these days. We for a few years we thought that there could be corruption that occurs if you shrink tempdb, and that ended up not being the case. It was fixed back in SQL 2000. Paul Randall confirmed that with Microsoft a while back.
It doesn't mean they all have to be 170 gigs. You can make them smaller.
Yeah, go ahead and shrink that file down. And if you need 170 gigabytes, divide 170 gigabytes by the number of files. Maybe it's 8, and that's your target size for each of those files.
Let's see. Nate says, I was afraid of corruption. I know that feeling, Nate. I'm afraid of corruption a lot on some of our databases because my CheckDB jobs were failing in production. Specifically, Lightspeed CheckDB jobs. I didn't know Lightspeed ran CheckDB. But when I ran Ola Hollengren's CheckDBs on the same databases or some backups on a new dev box, it was fine. Should I worry? I don't know that what I'm thinking is maybe you've got Lightspeed jobs that run a restore of the database and run CheckDB there somewhere else. They could be failing for all kinds of reasons. Run CheckDB in production. Go ahead, run it in production and see what you get there. I'm not saying you always have to do that. Just because you're getting any corruption warnings, I just want to give that a shot and go from there. Let's see. Sean says, I'm using the DMV sysdm exec query stats to find the most frequently run queries, but a couple of times a day the counts are getting reset. My server isn't getting restarted, and I swear no one's running DBCC free proc cache. What else can reset my query stats?
Junior DBA.
Junior DBA. Go ahead. Yeah, Tara, it looks like you. No?
Go ahead.
All right. So it could be so many things. You could be under memory pressure, which can start flushing execution plans and stats out of cache. You could be rebuilding indexes, which will update statistics, which will invalidate query plans. You could be updating statistics. You could be hitting the update stats threshold. If about 20% of the data in a table changes, that can cause plans to get flushed out of cache. Someone can be running SP recompile. All kinds of stuff that can run to cause that. I would never count on that stuff staying the same for forever, but just I wouldn't expect them to change a few times per day throughout. That would make me suspect memory pressure.
I had a client maybe a couple months ago that basically it was getting wiped out every 5 minutes. It was severe memory pressure. We couldn't even, look at the plan cache. I mean, it was horrible.
Or reconfigure is another one that will do it. So if you run a reconfigure statement, if you change certain settings, like someone changes max stop or cost threshold, I remember we had this one client that was changing max stop automatically, like several times a day, and for different data warehouse loads, and that was
Wow.
well,
I didn't know that reconfigure data because some clients have asked me for some of the changes that I've recommended that they do on their servers. Sometimes it's changing the max stop, and they said, "Can you run those during the day?" And I said, "Oh, I've run those during the day, so maybe I'll change my tune." Just don't run the reconfigure. Maybe schedule the reconfigure later on.
Yeah. I'm all about it. I'm like, let me just get SP Blitz Cache first so that I got good data. And
Yeah.
Mark Henry asks, do you have a good book on preparing for Always On? And just one thing we'll say, just because there's grammar Nazis, the grammar Nazis will tell you that you did great putting a space between always and on, but they will also tell you need to say always on availability groups, because technically failover clusters are also called always on these days as well. I'm assuming that you mean always on availability groups. I don't think we've seen any good books on it yet. Have you, Tara? Have you seen, or Joris? You seen either? No.
No.
Yeah, it's kind of a bummer.
I started working on availability groups just from scratch. I mean, just playing with it and, putting it, we wanted to have it in production for a certain application, and so we started it in the dev environment and learned as we went. And it was probably, 6 months before we deployed to production, so we had a fairly good understanding of how to use it. But it's, I know that we say that there's some complexities to it, but it is fairly easy to understand if you spend the time to learn certain topics, like quorum and votes.
And I think Books Online is pretty good now these days with it too. I mean, they go into detail. If anything, it's too long. It's really good.
And with SQL 2016, they're making things easier with the distributed availability groups. I think they're trying to resolve the fact that a lot of companies have had issues with availability groups when they have a failover availability group for HA at the primary site, DR site, and then they lose the connection to the DR site, and the whole cluster goes down. So distributed availability group to me seems like Microsoft's just trying to resolve companies having downtime, and really it was because they didn't set up their systems correctly.
Tim says, Idera SQL Diagnostic Manager has 31 connections open with a specific wait type. It's like MSQL exact manager mutex for days. Tried killing 2 and they've been at 0% rollback for a day. Any suggestions? Call Idera.
Yeah. Why are you killing them though? I mean, what problem are they causing?
Yeah. Well, they're causing a problem now. They're about to. Wah, wah. JH says, I thought we might have had a parameter sniffing issue on a couple of complex queries. I've tried option recompile, but that didn't help out. What are my options for fixing parameter sniffing issues? So what are a few things that he can start with thinking about there?
So, optimize for a specific value, do some testing to see if there's a specific value that works well for most cases. It's probably not going to work well for all cases. You probably don't want to do optimize for unknown. That's basically the option that we had in SQL 2005 and earlier, where we declared a local variable, and it just optimizes for an average value, and an average value is not good. You might as well spend the time to do some testing to see what value works best in most cases. If option recompile didn't work, maybe play around with option max. No, I don't know if max up wouldn't solve a parameter sniffing issue. Plan guides, I really like plan guides. When you don't have the option to modify store procedures, and if you're the DBA, you can just go ahead and throw that plan guide out there. What I like to tell people, though, if you do use plan guides, make sure that they are stored with the store procedure in source control, because they really are. They're tied to that object. If a developer goes to try to alter the store procedure in dev, and you put the plan guide in there too, because you want production to match dev, they're going to get an error, and they're not going to know what to do with that. So attach it to the store procedure in source control.
Yeah, every time every time you go to change the stored proc too, you're going to just want to know that there's a plan guide, because you may need it to.
And a plan guide is just an easy way to get around having to modify the store procedure, or if your queries are inside the application, locked in the application, then a plan guide is a way to affect the execution plans. But if they are store procedures and you have access to those, you could just do index hints or optimize for, and these are the types of things you can do in a plan guide without modifying the code.
Yeah, the one keyword that pops at me was complex, and anytime that I saw a complex query, I always tried to simplify that, whether that's by multiple statements or whatnot, and make it easier for SQL Server to come up with a good plan.
That's true. Yeah, maybe changing the complexity to use temp tables to help that out.
Yeah. Let's see here. And also for an epic post on that, Google for slow in the app, fast in SSMS. Slow in the app, fast in SSMS. It's an epic post by Erland Summerskog. It's like 50 pages long, and it's fantastic.
Does that have to do with the user connection parameters that, the applications has a different set option than SSMS does? Yeah, every time that I am working with an execution plan in production and my query's fast and the app is still slow, you want to grab the application's user connection options, the set options, and what I do really quick, I know profiler is a bad thing in production, do a really quick profiler trace in production, even use the GUI, all you need is the existing connection event in there, start it, and then 5 seconds later stop it, and then grab one of the set options from there. And then put that in your Management Studio window, and now you'll have the exact same execution plan as the application, and you can start testing from there.
Let's see. Paul says, I'm working with merge replication, my condolences, and I was wondering what your thoughts are on setting up the identity fields to use half of the values on the publisher and the other half on the subscriber, like 1 to 2 billion on the publisher and 2 to 3 billion, 0 to 1 billion on one, 1 to 3 billion on another. So all this helps you with is insert conflicts. It doesn't help you with update conflicts. I do like it just so that you can see where inserts came from, but it's not like a total panacea. I like starting at +1 on one, going up in one, -1, and going down by 1 in the other two.
Yeah, that's what I would recommend, negative values and positive values. I don't know about, I mean, why would, you mentioned updates, why would the identity values be updated? I mean, that's pretty rare, I would think.
Oh, no, yeah. I'm just saying if you want to figure out where something came from, you can't tell.
Oh, gotcha.
Yeah. Let's see here. Mark says, what are your thoughts on rebuilding all the tables in Simple Model? We have a very fragmented large database, and in testing it takes forever because of the transaction log. Let me rephrase your question, Mark. If I'm doing a lot of work, is that work faster in Simple Recovery Model as opposed to Full Recovery Model?
Absolutely not. It's not for this though. I mean, for bulk logged, right? I mean, but the transaction log, the amount of space you're going to use in the transaction is still the same in Simple Recovery Model, not mode model. As compared to Full Recovery Model. So that's not going to help you any, and you've lost your recovery points. I mean, you won't be able to, if you have an outage and you need to do a restore, you won't be able to do a restore to any point in time while it was in Simple Model.
So what is the difference between Simple Recovery Model and Full Recovery Model?
It's just what happens at the end of when the transaction completes. Is it cleared out of the log? With Simple Model, it is not, and with Full, you have to do a backup log before it's cleared out. So I don't know. I don't know what's going on with your system because it's not going to be I/O because it's the same amount of work. So I don't know.
Yeah, what we're just saying is that Simple isn't going to solve the problem there. If you have crappy I/O, it's going to take a long time to rebuild your indexes.
And what are you trying to solve? Is your very fragmented large database causing problems? I would bet you don't have performance problems as a result of it. You might have storage problems as a result of it, but not performance.
And you're making your storage performance worse, usually by doing heavy index rebuilds. I was literally just emailing back and forth with a client who was trying to do index rebuilds every night, and it's taking longer and longer, making the backups take longer, making the outage windows take longer. I'm like, ooh, what problem are you trying to solve here? Michelle asks, Brent, how did you like Alaska? I was there last week of July, beautiful state. I adore Alaska. I've been there, I think, 5, 6, 7 times now on cruises. I would never want to live there, but it's just really nice to roll through on a boat and eat steak and crabs. Michael says, who does the very cool caricatures of caricatures?
Caricatures.
Cartoons of the team for our website. It's a guy by the name of Eric Larson. If you search for ericlarsonartwork.com, he has a cartoonist style, and we're actually on his example pages. He uses us as his examples too. Mandy says, "Hi, SQL 2014 Standard here. I think we're going to call you Mandy rather than SQL 2014 Standard. I've seen a proc captured by Profiler perform very high reads in the tens of millions, but when I run the same proc in SSMS with the same parameters, I see very few reads. Why the big difference?"
Different execution plans. You have different set options. Like I just mentioned, your Management Studio window has, I think it's like one different set option that's different between Management Studio and what normal applications use. Java, .NET. They just have different set options, and the set options affects whether or not you're going to get the same execution plan. So, as far as high reads, it's probably a missing index. And compare the execution plan that the app is getting to the one that you're getting. And maybe you're going to need to force the plan that you're getting over to the application, the store procedure, put a plan guide in, or something optimized for.
I can't say enough good stuff about that. Slow in the app, fast in SSMS blog post. Huge, epic, really goes into details on it. Tim, following up on Tim's problem with Idera, he says Idera won't monitor the server because it has the maximum number of connections open, and they're all stuck with that weight. Oh, then definitely call Idera because they may have run into this before. This may be something where they have a query that's going to hell in a handbasket.
There's nothing that we can do to help out with that.
Just restart the server. How bad can it be?
Insert behind the Oracle shirt.
Yes, Oracle, exactly. Do it live. Oracle guy says so. Kyle says, a few weeks ago I sent a question about a nearly 50 gig database. Here's the deal, Kyle. If you send in a question and we don't answer it across a span of a few weeks, either we're not going to remember it or go post it on Stack Exchange. He says the table sizes were small in SSMS reports. Someone else's blah, blah, blah. Any thoughts on additional features in Blitz to check for abnormally sized system tables? So if you want to suggest features for our scripts, go to firstresponderkit.org, firstresponderkit.org, and then click on GitHub up at the top. From there, there's information about how you can contribute, how you can suggest features, all kinds of good stuff. So go ahead over there. Ronnie says, "Hi guys and Tara, I've set up a linked server from server A to server B." Well, why? Stop doing that. In the security page for the link server, I'm using this be made using this security context, and I'm using a simple login that I've configured on server B. I'm consistently getting a login failure, and I know that the login or password is correct. What should I do?
Well, I don't know how to solve that error, but you should not be using that option on your link server. Does that user only have read access to a particular table? Then maybe use it. But oftentimes what I've seen on link servers is that they point to an SA account, and that means every user on your entire system has access to server B using SA, and they could do terrible things with it. But why are you getting login failed? I don't know.
And the other thing that's really easy is just trace. Go run a trace over on the server B where the login target is going. What I see over and over again is there's some kind of name resolution problem, like someone thinks they have the right server name, but they're actually pointed at the wrong server. JH asks, I have a virtual machine. Should I put TempDB on a separate log? TempDB's data files on one drive and log files on another, like TempDB data files on T and the log files on U. I've never seen that recommended even on physical.
We always had it separated for my last 3 jobs. Just when this SQL 2012 installer GUI came out, it had the separate. Didn't it have the separate options? Yeah, for data and log. Now I don't think that it necessarily makes a difference as far as performance goes, but we liked it because if you're separate, if you run out of disk space on one of them, you're not running out on both, which doesn't really matter because it's just TempDB.
Yeah.
It's just going to roll back the query. I don't know. Yeah, we had them separated.
How to keep them separated. And I have no opinion. If that's your biggest performance problem, you're in just a wonderful situation. I normally just throw them all in the same drive, and I just like using, so say that you're going to have 4 data files just because I have this number of fingers on my hand. Say that you're going to use 4 data files in one log file. I just take the space available and divide it by 5. So if I have 100 gigs available, I'm going to have 4 20 gig data files and 1 20 gig log file, and just set that up when I have no else clue on how the SQL Server should be set up. Says, what do you guys think about SQL Server on Linux? All right, Richie's making a face. Richie, you answer first.
I think Linux has plenty of good relational database systems. I'm not quite sure why we need SQL Server on Linux at this point.
No one pays Microsoft to use them.
I guess. There's got to be some sort of Azure story here that they're while they're doing it. I'm not particularly enthusiastic about it. I'd use Postgres on Linux, if it was me. But it's going to be interesting. It's going to be interesting to see the bugs coming out of it too.
How about you, Tara?
Yeah, basically the same answer as Richie. What I don't like about it though is that they have such limited features. They're going out with a very small. It's not supporting everything, and they're very selective of who's getting to use it right now. So I mean, I think that MVPs are now able to get their hands on it, and before they couldn't. But some companies are actually running it, and Microsoft's working directly with them. And I don't know. Yeah, I don't know why it was needed, but I mean maybe it's just because some applications require SQL Server, and companies don't like Microsoft products, so they want to run Linux as their operating systems for servers at least. Probably not for desktops.
Yeah, I don't get it either. The thing that I really don't get is I don't see any bloggers or presenters going, yeah, I've needed this for so long. Here's why. I really think it's a business marketing type decision. The only thing that gives me hope is, Richie kind of hinted at it with maybe it's an Azure thing. What if you're the Microsoft sysadmin team responsible for running Azure SQL DB? What if you're frustrated with problems with Windows in running Azure SQL DB, and you see moving to Linux underpinning that as being a better solution? What if Microsoft constantly likes to tout, we've been running it in the cloud for so long, that's why SQL Server 2016 is awesome. Azure SQL DB has been soaking in it for the last, 16 months. What if Microsoft comes out and says, we've been proving Azure SQL DB running on Linux for the last 6 months, and we didn't even tell you? That would be kind of amazing. That would be kind of cool if they do that. I just don't know that it's going to affect a lot of on-premises shops.
Yeah.
Yeah, it sounds like a lot of people are going to end up having to learn Linux because of all this. It's going to happen. Hey, now I don't have to pay a Windows license. Go, Bob, you go learn some Linux now. Okay.
Costs $10,000 in training to save $1,000 of licensing.
Yeah, that's true.
Joseph says, in regarding the SQL Server on Linux, he says that the biggest problem with SQL Server is the Windows OS. I would beg to differ. I would beg very much to differ. William says, Brent's wearing an Oracle sweatshirt, mind blown. They have a really good sailing team. Also, Larry Ellison owns an island. Who can't love that? Guys, I've never used their database platform. They make nice clothes. If Microsoft made sweatshirts that were this nice, I would be all over them. I have an MVP jacket that's really nice. But Thomas says you'll be able to use PowerShell to support Linux. That's great. But now at least 4 or 5 DBAs will be qualified to do it.
Linux had a shell problem? What? That doesn't make sense to me.
It's true. The Linux guys have been using GUIs for the last decade. Linux guys have been begging for, please let us stop using this GUI. Joseph says, we had a query with an OR condition that caused a big, nasty, ugly join. I replaced this with 2 different queries to join together with a union in order to accomplish the same thing, and it returns immediately. Is this a good idea? Should I check for this on a query-by-query basis? Is this a known bug?
I actually learned about that from Jeremiah's past session back in 2011. It was like refactoring T-SQL or something like that was the title of it, and I actually blogged about it the next day, and I didn't know that trick, and I've actually tried to use it a few times since then, and sometimes it works and sometimes it doesn't, and I'm not too sure why sometimes, and So when I've seen or issues with clients, I say, consider, testing union. I can't, guarantee it's going to fix the problem, but you should try it out. The thing I don't like about that solution is then you have repeated code, and someone goes to make make a feature change or a bug fix. You got to remember to do it on every single one of those union queries.
Yeah, was that a union all or just a straight union?
I think that he said, you replace it with a union, and if you can do union all, then that's great. That's better.
Okay, all right.
Let's see here. Nate says, I listened to a podcast recently where they basically said, always use temp tables, never use table variables. What has been you guys' experience around that?
That is my mantra. I mean, we followed the old advice, back on 2005, that if the table variables had, less than 1,000 rows, or if you had less than 1,000 rows, use table variables, more than use temp tables. So we did that. And boy, did we have performance issues. And we were working with Microsoft engineers, and this was an extremely critical system. And one of the engineers suggested, oh, just try it out, swapping the table variable for a temp table. Let's see what happens. Boom, performance was solved. I mean, it was just like, it was amazing. And there was only like 1 to 5 rows in the table. So it was, a really small data set. And since then, I will not even use a table variable except in ad hoc. If I'm doing like a form, if I'm trying to answer a question on a form, I'll go ahead and use a table variable in my Management Studio window, but that's it. I do not, table variables I think are just terrible for performance. And Microsoft did make improvements in, 2014 or 2016, but it's still not good enough.
Yeah.
I bet not even once. No.
Not even once. I bet the podcast you listen to is Wayne Sheffield on Carlos El Chacon's SQL Data Partners podcast, which is a fun, if you like podcasts, and of course some of you are listening to this, SQL Data Partners podcast is good. It kind of takes presentations and turns them into podcasts. Wayne Sheffield knows what he's talking about, and his evidence is good. Nate says, yes, Brent nailed it. Yep, that's the one. That's good stuff.
You have an incredible memory, by the way, Brent. You just remember all these things. I'm just like, I know I heard about this somewhere. I can't think of what to Google to find it. And from now on, it doesn't matter if it's about SQL Server. It could just be about cooking. I'm going to ask you. Maybe you came across it.
Yeah, and I'm like, I think I was on that podcast once.
Yeah.
I'm not sure. Was I? I don't remember.
He was on a round table with, I can tell you, the people who were on it. Yes.
Yeah, that was twice. Oh my God.
My 8-year-old son has an amazing memory. He always has. And we were backpacking recently with a family, and there was a boy, and someone asked the other boy whether or not he remembers getting bitten by red ants, and he's like, I don't think I ever have. And my son said, yeah, you did. Several months ago, you got bitten by a whole bunch, and he described the place, and the kid's like, oh yeah, that's right. You think you would remember getting a whole bunch of red ants on you and them biting you?
Oh. What shapes kids and how they have these memories that he's going to remember forever. That's good.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Crazy. It's not a good thing sometimes, that's for sure.
All right. Well, thanks everybody for hanging out with us this week. It's always a pleasure hearing your questions, and we will see you guys next week on the podcast and on Office Hours. Adios, everybody.
Bye.